Now let's begin. Clayton McGee had learned patience the hard way. Growing up in foster care in Detroit had taught him that survival meant reading people, understanding their weaknesses, and knowing when to strike. Now, at 38, he'd built a life that teenage Clayton could never have imagined. A successful career as an investigative documentary filmmaker, a beautiful wife, and a daughter who made every struggle worth it. His wife Vivian was everything he'd never dared to hope for. They'd met 7 years ago at a film festival where she was showcasing her photography. She came from old money in Connecticut, the kind of family that summered in the Hamptons and had ancestors who'd signed important documents. Her mother, Darla Dunn, never let Clayton forget it. "She'll come around," Vivian would say whenever Darla made one of her cutting remarks about Clayton's uncertain background or artistic career. "She just needs time." 6 years of marriage had proven Vivian wrong. If anything, Darla's disdain had calcified into something harder, sharper. But Clayton had endured it for Vivian's sake, and for their daughter Sophie, who at 9 years old was the brightest light in his world. Sophie had inherited Vivian's artistic eye and Clayton's stubborn determination. She was whip-smart, empathetic, and yes, she loved food. She approached meals with genuine joy, something Clayton encouraged. He'd gone hungry too many nights as a kid. Seeing his daughter eat with enthusiasm healed something in him he hadn't known was broken. Darla saw it differently. Over the past year, her comments about Sophie's weight had grown more frequent, more pointed. "She's getting chunky," she'd say at family dinners. "You're letting her go, Vivian. At this rate, she'll be enormous by high school." Vivian would defend Sophie, but weakly, always mindful of keeping peace. Clayton would bite his tongue until it bled, counting backward from 10, reminding himself that Darla wasn't worth the fight. His daughter needed him steady, not explosive. He should have known it couldn't last. The Dunn family reunion happened every year at the sprawling estate in Greenwich that had been in the family for 4 generations. 37 relatives would descend on the property for a long weekend of tennis, sailing, and the kind of carefully orchestrated networking that passed for bonding among the wealthy. Clayton usually found excuses to minimize his attendance, but this year Vivian had begged. "It's important to my father," she'd said. "Please, just this once, can we do the whole weekend?" Her father, Warren Dunn, was one of the few members of Vivian's family Clayton actually respected. The man had built his own hedge fund rather than coasting on family money, and he'd always treated Clayton with distant but genuine respect. So Clayton had agreed. The weekend started tolerably. Clayton spent most of his time with Sophie, playing croquet and teaching her to skip stones across the pond, while Vivian navigated the complex social dynamics of her extended family. He noticed Darla watching them, her mouth pinched in that expression he'd learned meant she was building towards something. It came to a head on Saturday evening at the formal dinner. 32 family members packed around the enormous dining table in the main house, waited on by the catering staff Darla had hired for the occasion. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over china that probably cost more than Clayton's first car. Sophie sat between Clayton and Vivian, excited because the first course was lobster bisque, her favorite. She'd barely eaten lunch, too busy playing with her cousins, and Clayton could see the genuine hunger in the way she lifted her spoon. "Slowly, sweetheart," he murmured. "It's hot." She nodded, taking a careful sip, her eyes closing in pleasure. Clayton smiled, reaching for his own bowl. "Sophie, darling." Darla's voice carried down the table, sweet as poison honey. "Perhaps you should pace yourself. There are several more courses." The table fell silent. Sophie's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "She's fine, Mother," Vivian said quietly. "I'm only thinking of her health," Darla continued, her smile never wavering. At her age, portion control becomes so important. Clayton felt his jaw tighten. He caught Warren's eye across the table, saw the older man shake his head slightly. "Not here. Not now." "Grandma, I'm really hungry," Sophie said, her voice small. "I didn't eat much lunch." "Yes, I noticed. And breakfast. And dinner last night. It's becoming a pattern, isn't it?" "Mother." Vivian's voice had an edge now. "Drop it." But Darla was just getting started. Clayton could see it in her eyes. She'd been saving this up, and now she had an audience. "I'm not trying to be cruel, Vivian. But someone needs to say something. Look at her. She's already showing signs." "She's 9 years old," Clayton interrupted, his voice carefully controlled. "And she's perfect." "You would say that." Darla's mask slipped for just a moment, showing the contempt underneath. You clearly have no concept of proper. Sophie reached for a roll from the breadbasket. It was a defensive gesture. Clayton recognized it immediately, something to do with her hands, a way to retreat from the attention. Darla moved faster than he'd expected. Her chair scraped back, and she was around the table in 4 strides, her hand shooting out to grab Sophie's wrist. Stop it! The sweetness was gone from Darla's voice, replaced by something cold and vicious. Stop eating like a pig. Sophie tried to pull away. Darla's grip tightened, her French manicured nails digging into the soft skin of Sophie's arm. You're disgusting. Do you hear me? Disgusting. Sophie screamed. It was the sound that broke Clayton's paralysis, the high, frightened wail of his daughter in pain. He was moving before he consciously decided to, knocking his chair backward as he surged to his feet. Let go of her. His voice came out deadly quiet. Right now. Darla released Sophie's arm and stepped back, her face flushed. I was simply trying to. Clayton wasn't listening. He was kneeling beside Sophie, gently taking her arm. For perfect crescents marked where Darla's nails had broken the skin. Bruises were already forming, angry red marks that would turn purple by morning. The dining room had erupted. Vivian was crying, reaching for Sophie. Warren was on his feet, his face thunderous. Darla's sisters were talking over each other, some defending her, others calling for calm. The younger cousin stared, wide-eyed. Get your things, Clayton said to Vivian, his voice cutting through the chaos. We're leaving. Clayton, please, let's just. Now. Something in his tone made Vivian nod. She scooped up Sophie, who was crying silently now, her face pressed against her mother's shoulder. Darla had recovered her composure. Really, everyone, I think we're overreacting. I barely touched her. Clayton turned to face his mother-in-law. Every person in that room was watching, and he wanted them to remember this moment. You put your hands on my daughter. You hurt her. You humiliated her in front of her entire family. He paused, letting each word land. And you called her disgusting. I was trying to help. You need to understand something, Darla. Very clearly. Clayton took one step closer, and to his satisfaction, he saw her flinch. You will never touch my daughter again. You will never speak to her again. As far as I'm concerned, you no longer exist. He turned and walked out, leaving 31 stunned relatives in his wake. The drive back to their home in Brooklyn took 2 hours. Sophie fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from crying. Vivian sat in the passenger seat, her hands twisted in her lap. I should have stopped her sooner, she whispered. Yes, Clayton said. You should have. She's my mother. I kept thinking she'd never actually. She did. Clayton's hands were steady on the wheel, but inside, a cold fury was building. She hurt our daughter in front of everyone, and she's not sorry. Did you see her face? She thought she was justified. What are we going to do? Clayton stared at the road ahead, his mind already working through possibilities. I'm going to handle it. What does that mean? It means you're going to trust me. He glanced at Vivian. Can you do that? She nodded slowly. What do you need? Information. Everything you know about your mother. Every secret, every vulnerability, every person she's afraid of. He paused. And I need you to not ask questions about what I'm going to do with it. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then, there's a lot you don't know about her. About the family. Good. Clayton's smile held no warmth. Tell me everything. By the time they pulled into their driveway, Clayton had the skeleton of a plan. Vivian carried Sophie inside while Clayton grabbed their bags from the trunk. His phone buzzed. Warren Dunn. I'm sorry, the older man said without preamble. I should have put a stop to that years ago. Yes, Clayton agreed. You should have. Darla's, she's not well. I don't mean that as an excuse. But her obsession with appearances, with control, it's gotten worse over the years. I don't care about her mental state, Clayton said flatly. I care that she assaulted my daughter. I understand. For what it's worth, I've told her she's not welcome at the house until she gets professional help. Real help, not just placating me. That's a start. But it's not enough. Warren sighed. What are you planning? Nothing illegal. That was technically true. Probably. But I'm going to make sure she understands that actions have consequences. Clayton, be careful. Darla has resources, connections. So do I. Clayton ended the call. Inside, the house was quiet. Vivian had gotten Sophie cleaned up and into bed. Clayton found his wife in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of the mattress, staring at nothing. I keep seeing her face, Vivian said. Sophie's face when my mother grabbed her. She was so scared. Clayton sat beside her, taking her hand. I know. I failed her. I've been failing her for months, maybe years. Every time my mother made a comment, every time she criticized Sophie's weight, I should have shut it down completely. But I kept thinking if I just managed the situation, if I smoothed things over. You were trying to keep the peace. I understand that. Clayton squeezed her hand. But the peace was already broken. Your mother broke it the first time she decided her need for control was more important than Sophie's well-being. What did you mean when you said you're going to handle it? Clayton was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I've spent my career exposing people who abuse power. Corrupt politicians, crooked businessmen, predators who think their money or connections make them untouchable. He met Vivian's eyes. Your mother just showed me exactly who she is. And I'm very good at showing the world who people really are. You're going to make a documentary about her? Something like that. Clayton stood, pacing to the window. But I need to know everything first. You said there were things I didn't know about your family. Vivian nodded slowly. My mother, she's done things. Bad things. She's just always been good at hiding them. Tell me. And she did. Over the next 2 hours, Vivian painted a picture of Darla Dunn that was far darker than Clayton had imagined. The cruelty he'd witnessed wasn't an aberration. It was her nature, carefully concealed beneath expensive clothes and charitable donations. There was the housekeeper Darla had accused of theft to cover up her own gambling debts. The woman had been blacklisted from every domestic service in Connecticut, had lost her home. She'd been innocent. There was Vivian's younger sister, Lynn, who'd struggled with eating disorders throughout her teens. Darla had refused to acknowledge the problem, had told Lynn she was being dramatic, seeking attention. Lynn had been hospitalized twice before their father finally intervened. She lived in California now, hadn't spoken to Darla in 5 years. There were the children at the private school, where Darla sat on the board. Several families had complained that Darla had targeted their kids, made cutting remarks about their appearance, their backgrounds. The complaints had been buried. Darla donated too much money for the school to risk offending her. She gets away with it because people are afraid of her, Vivian said. She knows everyone. She sits on boards, she chairs committees. Cross her, and she'll make sure you're frozen out of every country club and charity gala in the tri-state area. She's a bully, Clayton said. A rich, connected bully. Yes, and I've watched her destroy people who challenged her. Vivian looked up at him. So whatever you're planning, please be careful. She'll come for you. Clayton smiled grimly. I'm counting on it. He spent Sunday locked in his home office while Vivian tended to Sophie. The bruises on their daughter's arm had darkened overnight, and Clayton had Vivian photograph them from multiple angles. Documentation. His first calls were to sources he'd cultivated over years of investigative work. A private investigator in Manhattan who owed him a favor. A forensic accountant who'd helped him unravel financial fraud for a documentary 3 years ago. A social media analyst who could trace digital footprints through layers of privacy settings. I need everything, he told each of them. Financial records, social connections, digital presence, properties, legal proceedings. Nothing is off limits. By evening, information was starting to flow in. Darla's finances were creative, to say the least. She claimed a modest income from the family trust, but spent like someone making 10 times that. The discrepancy suggested either hidden income or debt, both worth investigating. Her social media was meticulously curated. Photos of charity galas, garden parties, artistic shots of the Greenwich estate. But the PI found something interesting in the metadata. Many of the photos were older than they appeared, recycled and reposted to create an illusion of constant activity. Darla was building a facade. Clayton's forensic accountant called at 9 p.m. This is fascinating, she said. Your subject has 5 credit cards, all maxed out. She's been moving debt around, using cash advances from one card to pay minimums on others. Classic spiral. How bad? At least 400,000. Maybe more. I'm still digging. Clayton whistled softly. And her husband doesn't know? The accounts are all in her name. If she's been hiding the statements, he might have no idea. Keep digging, Clayton said. I want to know where every dollar went. His phone rang again immediately. The social media analyst, a woman named Candace who'd helped him expose an online harassment ring 2 years ago. I found something you'll want to see, Candace said. Your subject posts under her real name. Very proper, very curated. But she's also got 3 alt accounts. She uses them to comment on posts about parenting, child development, weight loss. Let me guess. She's not spreading positivity. She's vicious. Fat shaming, mom shaming, targeting women who post about body positivity or intuitive eating. She's told multiple mothers their children will die of obesity. Told one woman her daughter's diabetes was her fault for being a bad parent. Clayton felt his anger crystallize into something cold and focused. Can you document all of it? Screenshots, links, evidence that the accounts belong to her. Already on it. I'm also finding connections to pro-ana sites. Not recent, but from about 10 years ago. She was active on forums promoting eating disorders, posting thinspiration photos. That would have been around the time Lynn was hospitalized. Darla had been fueling her own daughter's eating disorder while pretending to be concerned. Send me everything, Clayton said. By Monday morning, Clayton had pieces of a puzzle. What he needed now was leverage, a way to bring everything crashing down at once, with maximum impact and no room for Darla to spin or deflect. He called Warren. I need to ask you something, Clayton said, and I need an honest answer. Go ahead. If you had proof that Darla had destroyed someone's life through false accusations, would you care? Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of proof? The housekeeper, Mercedes Cooley. Darla accused her of stealing jewelry to cover up her own debt. Mercedes lost everything. I remember, Warren said quietly. I never liked how that situation was handled. What if I could prove Darla lied? That Mercedes was innocent. How would you prove that? Darla sold the stolen jewelry. I found the receipts. She sold it to a jeweler in Manhattan 3 days before she claimed it was missing. Clayton paused. She committed fraud, Warren, and she destroyed an innocent woman to cover it up. Warren was quiet for a long time. Send me what you have. First, I need to know, if I expose all of this, are you going to protect her? No, Warren said firmly. What she did to Sophie. I'm done making excuses. If she's done the things you're suggesting, she needs to face consequences. One more thing. The board she sits on, the charities, the school. You have connections there. Some. I'm going to need you to make some calls. Warren Dunn was many things, but he wasn't a fool. You're going to destroy her. I'm going to hold her accountable, Clayton corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Clayton thought about Sophie's bruised arm, about the fear in his daughter's eyes, about Mercedes Cooley, whose life had been ruined by lies, about Lynn, who'd almost died while her mother posted pro-ana content online, about all the children Darla had shamed and belittled, using her wealth and position as a shield. Yes, he said, there is. Tuesday morning, Clayton put his plan in motion. First, he contacted Mercedes Cooley. It took some tracking. She'd moved to Pennsylvania after losing her job, but he found her working as a waitress in Philadelphia. He drove down to meet her in person. Mercedes was in her 50s, wary when Clayton explained who he was. But when he showed her the evidence that could clear her name, tears rolled down her face. I knew she was lying, Mercedes whispered. But who was going to believe me? The Dunns are. They're untouchable. No one's untouchable, Clayton said. I want to help you, but I need your permission to use your story. It's going to get ugly. Will it hurt her? Darla. Yes. Mercedes thought for a moment, then nodded. Do it. She called me a thief in front of my children. They grew up thinking their mother was a criminal. Her voice hardened. Make her pay. Next, Clayton reached out to the families whose children Darla had targeted at the private school. He expected resistance, but he'd underestimated how many people were waiting for someone to stand up to Darla Dunn. She told my daughter she had peasant hands, one mother said, her voice shaking with rage. My daughter was 8 years old, and Darla Dunn told her she looked like hired help. Another parent, my son has ADHD. Darla pushed to have him expelled, said he was disruptive, a bad influence. We had to pull him out of the school we'd sacrificed to afford. Clayton documented everything. Names, dates, specifics. He recorded interviews, collected emails, built an airtight case. Wednesday, he received the full financial breakdown from his accountant. Darla wasn't just in debt. She'd been embezzling from one of her own charities. Small amounts, carefully disguised as legitimate expenses, but over time it added up to nearly $70,000. She's been doing it for 3 years, the accountant explained. Reimbursing herself for event costs that never happened. Paying herself consulting fees for work she never performed. Is it prosecutable? Absolutely. if anyone cared to look. Clayton made sure someone would look. He packaged the evidence and sent it anonymously to the charity's board, copying the Connecticut Attorney General's office. Thursday morning, he created a comprehensive dossier. Every piece of evidence, every interview, every screenshot. Darla's financial fraud, her online harassment, the false accusation against Mercedes, the cruelty toward children, the theft from her own charity. He didn't make it public. Not yet. Instead, he sent targeted copies to specific people. The boards Darla sat on, the schools she was affiliated with, the charities she chaired, every organization where she wielded power and influence. He included a simple note. Darla Dunn assaulted a 9-year-old child in front of 32 witnesses last Saturday. The attached documents detail other abusive behavior. You may want to review her fitness for leadership positions. Then he waited. Friday morning, it began. The first call came from the private school. Darla's position on the board was being reevaluated. They were so sorry, but given the serious nature of the allegations, they felt it best to suspend her pending investigation. The second call was from the Children's Hospital, where Darla chaired a fundraising committee. They were very concerned about the allegations of financial impropriety. Her access to charity accounts was being immediately revoked. The third was from the country club. Several members had expressed discomfort. Perhaps Darla should take a voluntary leave of absence? Clayton knew exactly when Darla received her first notification because Warren texted him. She's on the phone. She's screaming. By noon, Darla had been removed from 3 boards and was under investigation by 2 charities. Her social media alt accounts had been exposed by a parenting blogger who'd been one of her victims. The story was going viral in mom groups across the internet. The Attorney General's office had opened a formal inquiry into the charity fraud. Mercedes Cooley's lawyer had filed a defamation suit against Darla, armed with the evidence Clayton had provided. And Clayton's phone was ringing off the hook with interview requests. Someone had leaked that an investigative filmmaker was behind the expose. News outlets wanted the story. Clayton ignored them all. This wasn't about publicity for him. Friday evening, Warren called again. She knows it was you. Good. She's threatening to sue. She says you've destroyed her reputation, that everything you've claimed is false. She can try. Every piece of evidence is documented and verified. I have witnesses, financial records, screenshots. She'll lose, and she'll lose publicly. Clayton paused. How is she? Honestly, she's falling apart. She's made 17 calls to her lawyer. She's trying to spin this, to claim she's being persecuted. Warren sighed. The problem is, no one's listening. You didn't just expose her, Clayton. You systematically dismantled every power structure she relied on. That was the point. I know. And I'm not saying she doesn't deserve it. Warren was quiet for a moment. Vivian called me. She wanted me to know that Sophie's doing better. She's been sleeping through the night again. She's resilient, Clayton said. Kids are. Like her father. Clayton didn't respond to that. He'd never talked much about his childhood with Warren, the foster homes, the instability, the times he'd gone to bed hungry. But Warren was perceptive. You built a good life, Warren continued. A family, a career. You could have become bitter, angry at the world. Instead, you became someone who protects people. I'm not a hero, Clayton said. I'm just a father who won't let anyone hurt his daughter. That's what makes you a hero. Saturday morning, 1 week after the incident at the family dinner, Clayton was making breakfast when his phone rang. Darla. He considered not answering, but he wanted to hear what she had to say. You bastard. Her voice was raw, stripped of its usual polished tone. You destroyed me. Over nothing. She's fine. A few bruises. Children get bruises. She got those bruises from you, Clayton said calmly. From your nails digging into her skin while you called her disgusting. I was trying to help her. She was making a spectacle of herself, eating like a hungry 9-year-old. Yeah, Darla, how dare she? You've ruined my life. She was screaming now. Everything I built, everything I worked for. You didn't build anything. You inherited money and used it to bully people. The only thing you worked for was the reputation you're now losing. Clayton's voice hardened. And you didn't lose it because of me. You lost it because of what you did. To Sophie. To Mercedes Cooley. To your own daughter. To dozens of children whose only crime was existing in a body you didn't approve of. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I have the screenshots, Darla. I've seen what you wrote on those forums. Fat children are child abuse. Mothers who can't control their children's weight should have them taken away. That was you. Silence. You're a bully, Clayton continued. You always have been. The only difference between you and the playground bully is that you had money to hide behind. Well, congratulations. Now everyone sees you for what you are. I'll sue you. I'll take everything. With what money? You're $400,000 in debt. Your charity fraud is under criminal investigation. You're about to lose the defamation case Mercedes is bringing. And when that happens, everyone will know you lied about her, that you destroyed an innocent woman's life to cover up your gambling problem. He paused. By all means, sue me. Add it to the list of legal problems you can't afford. Warren won't let me. Warren's done protecting you. He told me himself. He could hear her breathing on the other end, rapid and shallow. What do you want? I don't want anything from you, Darla. I want you to stay away from my family. I want you to understand that you can't hurt people without consequences. And I want you to get help, real help, for whatever is broken inside you that makes you cruel. You self-righteous. Clayton hung up. Vivian was standing in the doorway, Sophie beside her. They'd heard his side of the conversation. Is Grandma Darla okay? Sophie asked quietly. Clayton knelt down to his daughter's level. Grandma Darla is going through some things right now. But what's important is that you understand something. What she did to you was wrong. What she said to you was wrong. None of that was your fault. Sophie nodded slowly. I know. You told me that already. I'm telling you again because I need you to really believe it. You're perfect exactly as you are. The way you eat, the way you look, all of it. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small. Sophie hugged him tightly. I won't, Daddy. After breakfast, while Sophie was playing in her room, Vivian sat down with Clayton at the kitchen table. My father called, she said. He told me everything you did. Everything you found. Are you angry? No. Vivian shook her head. I'm ashamed it took this for me to see how bad it was. And I'm grateful you protected our daughter when I couldn't. You can now, Clayton said. That's what matters. She'll never forgive you, you know. My mother. I don't want her forgiveness. I want her to leave us alone. What if she doesn't? What if she keeps trying to? She won't. Clayton was certain. Because if she does, I'll release everything publicly. Right now, the story is contained. It's spread through her social circles, her organizations, but it hasn't hit mainstream media. If she forces my hand, I'll give it to every news outlet in the country. I'll make a documentary. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what Darla Dunn is. Vivian was quiet for a moment. You'd really do that? In a heartbeat. You're kind of terrifying when you want to be. Clayton smiled. Only to people who deserve it. The fallout continued through the following week. The Attorney General's investigation led to formal charges. Darla was facing multiple counts of fraud. Mercedes Cooley's lawsuit was moving forward. The private school had launched its own investigation and discovered additional complaints they'd previously buried. But the most damaging blow came from an unexpected source. Lynn, Vivian's sister, flew in from California. Clayton met her for the first time at their house on Tuesday evening. She looked like Vivian, but thinner, harder, with shadows under her eyes that spoke of old battles. Thank you, were the first words Lynn said to him. For doing what I never had the courage to do. They sat in the living room while Vivian made tea. Lynn told her story, the eating disorder that started at 13, the hospitalizations, the years of therapy. She used to weigh me, Lynn said, every morning before school. If I'd gained even a pound, she'd take away my allowance, cancel plans with friends. She'd say I was getting fat, that I was embarrassing the family. I didn't know it was that bad, Vivian whispered. She was careful. When Dad was around, she was the concerned mother. The minute he left, she'd show her real face. Lynn turned to Clayton. I heard what she did to Sophie, and I heard what you did to her. I want to help. How? I'm filing a formal complaint with the medical board. For the eating disorder forums, the pro-ana content. She was actively encouraging disordered eating in minors while sitting on the board of a children's hospital. They need to know. Are you sure? Clayton asked. It's going to bring up painful memories. I'm sure. I have a daughter now too. 5 years old. I'll be damned if I let my mother anywhere near her. Lynn's voice was steel. She needs to be stopped completely, not just slowed down. With Lynn's complaint, the children's hospital launched their own investigation. They discovered that Darla had been using her position to target families with overweight children, suggesting they were neglectful parents, pushing for CPS involvement. By the end of the second week, Darla had lost every position she'd held. Every board, Every committee, every charity. Her social connections had dried up overnight. Former friends weren't returning calls. Invitations had stopped coming. The defamation lawsuit went to mediation. Darla's lawyer tried to argue that she'd simply been mistaken about the jewelry, not malicious. But Clayton's evidence was overwhelming. The case settled for $200,000, money Darla didn't have. She'd have to liquidate assets. Warren, to his credit, didn't bail her out. She needs to face this, he told Clayton. All of it. The criminal charges were still pending, but the prosecutor was building a solid case. Darla was looking at potential jail time for the charity fraud. 3 weeks after the family dinner, Clayton received an unexpected call from a woman named Stephanie Walker. "You don't know me," she said, "but I'm a family law attorney. I represent several of the families affected by Darla Dunn's behavior at the private school. I wanted to thank you." "You don't need to thank me." "I do, though. One of my clients has a daughter who became suicidal after Darla's targeted campaign against her. The girl is in therapy now, but we almost lost her." Stephanie's voice cracked. "What you did, exposing Darla, it gave these families the courage to come forward. They're speaking out about the abuse. The school is implementing new policies, better oversight." "That's good," Clayton said. "Those kids deserve protection." "They do. And so did your daughter. I hope she's doing okay." "She is. She's strong." After the call, Clayton sat in his office, staring at the wall of research he'd compiled. Photos, documents, timelines. The complete picture of Darla Dunn's cruelty, methodically exposed. He thought about what Stephanie had said, that his actions had given other families courage. He hadn't considered that aspect. He'd been so focused on protecting Sophie, on making sure Darla could never hurt his daughter again, that he hadn't thought about the broader impact. But it mattered. Every child Darla had shamed, every parent she'd targeted, every person she'd crushed beneath her expensive heel, they were all safer now. The systems that had protected her were being dismantled. New oversight was being implemented. The truth was coming to light. Vivian appeared in the doorway. "What are you thinking about?" "Just everything." Clayton gestured at the wall. A month ago, Darla seemed untouchable. And now she's facing real consequences for the first time in her life. Vivian sat down beside him. "I got a call from my father. He's filing for divorce." Clayton looked at her in surprise. "Really?" He said he can't be married to someone he doesn't recognize. That the woman he thought he knew turned out to be a stranger. Vivian leaned against Clayton. "He's protecting his assets, setting up a trust for me and Lynn and the grandkids. Darla won't get anything beyond what the prenup guarantees." "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, honestly. I've been so worried he'd forgive her, that they'd reconcile, and we'd be back to managing her behavior. But he's done. He told me he wishes he'd listened to me years ago, when I first tried to tell him how she really was. Better late than never." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Vivian said, "Sophie wants to take karate lessons." Clayton smiled. "Yeah. She said she wants to know how to protect herself, and protect other kids who might get picked on." Vivian's eyes were bright with tears. "That's our girl. She went through something traumatic, and her response is to get stronger and help others." "She's remarkable," Clayton agreed. "Just like her mother." The following week, Clayton received a certified letter. Darla's lawyer, informing him that his client was dropping all threatened legal action against him. There was no apology, no admission of wrongdoing. Just a terse notification that they would not be pursuing any claims. Clayton filed it away. He'd expected this outcome. Darla had no case, and any lawsuit would only bring more attention to her behavior. What he didn't expect was the phone call from Darla herself, 3 days later. "I'm going to rehab," she said without preamble, "for gambling addiction." Warren's lawyer said it might help with sentencing for the fraud charges. Clayton waited. "I'm not calling to apologize," Darla continued. "I know you wouldn't believe me anyway." "You're right. I wouldn't. But I wanted you to know what you said about getting help for whatever's broken inside me. I'm doing that. Not for you, not for Sophie. For me. That's the only reason that would work," Clayton said. "I won't contact you again. Or Vivian, or Sophie." Warren's lawyer made it very clear that any contact could be considered harassment, and I'm already facing enough legal problems. Smart choice. There was a long pause. Then Darla said quietly, "I see it now. What I did. Not just to Sophie, but to Lynn, to those other children. I didn't see it before, or I didn't want to see it. But losing everything, It's made me look at myself. Really look. Clayton didn't respond immediately. He thought about the easy path, accepting this hint at contrition, telling Darla he hoped she got better, playing the gracious victor. But that wasn't who he was. And Darla didn't deserve easy forgiveness. I hope you do the work, he said finally. Real work, not just going through the motions to impress a judge. Because the person you were, the person who could hurt a child and call it help, that person caused real damage to real people. Mercedes Cooley, Lynn, Sophie, countless others. You can't undo that damage with a few months of therapy. I know, but maybe you can stop creating new damage. Maybe you can become someone who doesn't hurt people anymore. That would be something. That's all I'm hoping for, Darla said. To not be what I was. After she hung up, Clayton sat with the conversation. He didn't feel triumphant or satisfied. He felt tired. Vivian found him later, reading in the living room while Sophie practiced her karate forms in the backyard. Darla called me too, Vivian said. Same message. Rehab, therapy, staying away. Do you believe her? I don't know. Part of me wants to. She's still my mother, and there's this voice in my head that says I should give her a chance. Vivian sat down. But the bigger part of me remembers my daughter's screams. Remembers how many years of warning signs I ignored. And that part says it doesn't matter if she's sincere or not. The answer is still no. That's valid, Clayton said. Is it terrible that I feel relieved? That my own mother is basically being excommunicated from the family, and I'm just glad? No. It's self-preservation. You're protecting yourself and Sophie. That's not terrible. That's necessary. They watched through the window as Sophie performed a kick, her face scrunched in concentration. She'd lost the haunted look she'd carried for the first week after the incident. She was sleeping well, eating normally, laughing again. We did the right thing, Vivian said. Yes, Clayton agreed. We did. 2 months after the family dinner, the legal proceedings wrapped up. Darla pled guilty to fraud charges and received a suspended sentence, 2 years probation, community service, and mandatory restitution to the charity she'd stolen from. She'd also have to pay Mercedes Cooley's settlement, which meant selling the investment properties she'd accumulated over the years. Warren's divorce was proceeding smoothly. He'd set up generous trusts for Vivian, Lynn, and their children. Darla would get the Greenwich house and a modest monthly allowance from the prenup. Everything else stayed with Warren. The private school had implemented new policies around board member conduct and had hired an outside firm to audit their complaint procedures. 3 other board members had quietly resigned after the investigation revealed they'd helped bury complaints about Darla. Mercedes Cooley had been publicly exonerated, with the Dunn family issuing a formal apology and the domestic service that had blacklisted her sending a letter clearing her record. She'd found a better job, managing a small hotel in Philadelphia. Clayton had met her there for coffee last week. I got my life back, she'd said, her eyes bright. My kids can hold their heads up again. My youngest is applying to college. She never thought she'd be able to afford it, but with the settlement money, she can. I'm glad, Clayton had told her. You're a good man, Mercedes had said. Taking on the Dunns like that, most people wouldn't have bothered. Wouldn't have thought I was worth the trouble. Everyone's worth the trouble, Clayton had replied. Now, sitting in his office on a Saturday morning, Clayton was archiving the files. The dossier on Darla Dunn, the interviews, the evidence, all of it backed up and filed away. Just in case. But he didn't think he'd need it. Darla had kept her word about staying away. No calls, no contact, no attempts to see Sophie. According to Warren, she was living quietly in Greenwich, attending therapy sessions, working with a financial counselor. Daddy, Sophie appeared in the doorway, holding a piece of paper. I made something for you. Clayton took the paper. It was a drawing, him, Vivian, and Sophie standing together. Above them, in careful block letters, Sophie had written, "My Heroes." You spelled heroes wrong, Clayton said, smiling. It doesn't need an apostrophe. Oh, Sophie looked at the paper, then shrugged. Well, you're still my hero even if I can't spell it right. Come here, kiddo. Clayton pulled her into a hug. You know what makes someone a hero? What? Standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it's scary. He pulled back to look at her. You did that. When Grandma Darla hurt you, you didn't pretend it was okay. You cried out. You told us. That was brave. It didn't feel brave. It just hurt. I know. But brave doesn't mean not being scared or not being hurt. Brave means dealing with it anyway. Clayton tapped the drawing. You're my hero too. Sophie beamed. Later that evening, after Sophie was in bed, Clayton and Vivian sat on their back porch, watching the city lights. Warren invited us to Thanksgiving, Vivian said. Just us, him, and Lynn's family. He's renting a beach house in the Hamptons. No other relatives? Nope. He said he's done with the big family gatherings. Wants to start new traditions with the people who matter. I like that, Clayton said. Me too. Vivian leaned against him. Things are different now. Better, I think. Lynn and I are actually talking regularly. My father and I have real conversations instead of just surface pleasantries. Sophie's thriving. And you? I'm good. Really good. For the first time in years, I'm not managing everyone's emotions or trying to keep the peace. I'm just living. She looked up at him. What about you? Any regrets about how you handled things? Clayton considered. No. I made sure every piece of evidence was solid, that everything I revealed was true and could be verified. I gave Darla every opportunity to face consequences through proper channels. And when she kept avoiding accountability, I made sure she couldn't hide anymore. You destroyed her life, Vivian said. Not an accusation, just a statement of fact. I exposed her actions, Clayton corrected. She destroyed her own life through those actions. I just made sure everyone could see what she'd been doing. Do you think she'll actually change? Honestly, I don't know, and I don't really care. That's not my responsibility. Clayton took Vivian's hand. My responsibility is protecting our family, making sure Sophie grows up knowing she's loved and valued exactly as she is. Everything else, whether Darla gets better, whether she learns anything, that's on her. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Vivian said, "Thank you." For what? For being the kind of man who stands up for his family, who doesn't just accept cruelty as the price of keeping the peace, who fights back when someone hurts our daughter. She kissed him softly. For being you. Clayton pulled her closer, breathing in the moment. The peace, the safety, the hard-won knowledge that they'd faced something terrible and come through it stronger. His phone buzzed. A text from Warren. Darla completed her first month of therapy. Her counselor says she's actually engaging with the process. Thought you'd want to know. Clayton showed Vivian the text. That's good, she said. I hope it helps her. Yeah, Clayton agreed. I hope so too. And he meant it. Not because he'd forgiven Darla. Forgiveness wasn't his to give for the things she'd done to others. But because he genuinely hoped she'd become someone who didn't hurt people anymore. Someone who could look at herself honestly and choose to do better. But if she didn't? If she backslid? If she tried to come after his family again? Clayton had the files. The evidence. The connections. And he wouldn't hesitate to use them. Because that was the thing about accountability. It wasn't a one-time event. It was an ongoing process. And Clayton McGee, who'd learned patience and perseverance in the foster care system, who'd built a career exposing people who abused power, who'd become a father determined to protect his daughter, he could wait. He could always wait. And he'd always be watching. The moon rose over Brooklyn, casting silver light over the city. In her bedroom, Sophie slept peacefully, her karate gi hanging on the back of her door, her drawings covering the walls. In the living room, Vivian was scrolling through photos on her phone, laughing at a silly selfie Sophie had taken earlier. And Clayton sat on the porch, guardian and protector, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new chances to stand up for what was right. But tonight, his family was safe. Tonight, that was enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.